The scrape of a chair on the tile floor cut through the kitchen like a blade. My fork hovered midair, and I watched as Jason dropped his napkin carelessly on the table. "Dad, could you clear this up?" he said, not even glancing at me. My daughter, Megan, just nodded, already scrolling through her phone like dinner was over and I was the hired help. That was the moment it struck me. I wasn't family here anymore. I was staff. Hook, listen closely, because this is where the game really began. The kitchen smelled of garlic and overcooked pasta. The sauce pot still hissed on the stove, steam fogging up the window above the sink. Their laughter carried into the living room, mixing with the tinny sound of the television. And there I stood, plate in one hand, sponge in the other, 69 years old and reduced to scrubbing someone else's mess in a house that was mine long before they ever knew what hard work smelled like. I'd always been neat. A man who believed in clean counters, folded laundry, and tools put back exactly where they belonged. That discipline built a career, paid for Megan's college, kept a roof over her head when her mother passed. Now, those same habits were being used against me. Why hire help when you've got an old man desperate for company? Too guilty to say no? Too lonely to push back? "Dad, don't forget to mop the hallway after this," Megan called out, her voice smooth, casual, like she was ordering groceries. I froze, the plate dripping suds into the sink. "Of course," I muttered, though inside something clenched hard. Every night it was the same. Dinner, cooked by me. Clean up me. Laundry me. Their fridge filled, their bathroom stocked, their dog walked, their plants watered. They called it helping out around the house. I called it servitude. But the worst part wasn't the chores. It was how invisible I'd become. One night, I caught my reflection in the microwave door, tired eyes, shoulders bent, lips pressed thin from swallowing words that burned to get out. I looked like a tenant in my own life. After my wife, Ellen, passed 3 years ago, the silence of the house nearly killed me. The walls echoed her absence. I couldn't bear it. So when Megan said, "Dad, move in with us. You'll never feel alone again," I believed her. I packed my things, left the house I'd built with my own hands, and told myself this was family. But family doesn't treat you like the maid. That evening, after dishes and mopping, I sat alone in my little back room, barely big enough for a bed and a dresser. I heard them laughing in their master bedroom, their voices muffled by the thin walls. "He's useful," Jason was saying. His voice carried that smugness only lazy men have. "Useful?" Megan chuckled. "You mean free. We don't need to hire anyone while he's here." "Exactly. He cooks, he cleans, he watches the place. Honestly, we've got it made." I pressed my palms into the mattress, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then came Megan's voice again, softer, sharper. "But he's getting slower. What if he can't keep up?" Jason laughed. "Then we'll talk about a home. Sell what he's got left. He won't fight us. He's too tired." The air in that tiny room turned heavy, like someone had dropped a stone on my chest. I'd given them everything. Paid for Megan's braces, her wedding. Even helped Jason start his first business when no bank would give him a loan. Every sacrifice I made was supposed to buy me respect, maybe even gratitude. Instead, I'd been demoted to background noise, a burden to be managed. I stared at the ceiling, the plaster cracks forming lines like veins. Ellen's voice came back to me, a whisper from years ago. "Don't let anyone treat you smaller than you are." Smaller. That's exactly what they were doing. Shrinking me down into something less than a man. A shadow in their hallway with a mop. I lay awake until the house went quiet, their snores drifting through the walls. My thoughts wouldn't rest. I replayed their words, over and over, until the anger sharpened into something else. Not rage. Not despair. Strategy. Because here's what they didn't know. I was watching. I was listening. I was patient. And I'd spent a lifetime fixing things, solving problems others thought impossible. They thought they could break me down to scraps, but they'd forgotten. I built this family brick by brick. And I could dismantle it the same way. Around 2 a.m., I got up, walked barefoot to the kitchen. The floor was cold, the house silent. I opened the fridge, stared at the shelves I'd stocked, and smiled. A slow, steady smile. "They'll regret underestimating me," I whispered into the dark. That was the night the grief died and something colder was born. And soon, they'd understand exactly who they were dealing with. Morning light spilled through the blinds, and for once, I didn't move. Usually by 6 I'd be in the kitchen, frying eggs, brewing coffee, stacking toast on a plate before Megan even rolled out of bed. But that morning, I lay still, listening. The silence in the house was heavy. No dishes clattering, no hum of the coffee maker, no smell of bacon in the air. Just Megan's impatient footsteps down the hallway. "Dad? Coffee?" Her voice was already sharp. "Jason's running late." I smiled into the pillow. First test. The kettle whined a few minutes later, but then came the crash of a mug shattering on the tile. Jason cursed. Megan barked back, their little paradise already cracking without me moving a finger. I dressed slowly, pulled on my worn boots, and stepped outside into the cold morning air. The sky was pale gray, the kind that makes the neighborhood look washed out. I took a long breath, let the chill bite my lungs, and felt more alive than I had in months. I didn't tell them where I was going. No note, no explanation. Just left. The bus station smelled like diesel and old coffee. I bought a ticket to nowhere in particular, just a small town 2 hours west where no one knew my name. The ride was quiet, the road stretching past winter fields, barns collapsing into themselves, billboards peeling under the sun. I sat by the window, hands folded, watching the world pass while imagining the chaos I'd left behind. By noon, my phone had 3 missed calls. By evening, 7. Megan's texts started polite, then impatient. "Dad, where are you? You forgot to feed the dog. Jason had to make his own dinner. Thanks for nothing." And finally, "This isn't funny. Call me back now." I didn't. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel. The kind with buzzing neon lights and carpets that smelled of cigarettes. I closed the curtains, turned off my phone, and lay back on the bed. For the first time in months, no one shouted my name. No one snapped orders at me. No one treated me like a butler. The silence felt like medicine. But it wasn't just peace I was after. This was reconnaissance. I knew them. Megan hated responsibility. Jason pretended to be capable, but couldn't boil water without burning it. Every day I stayed away, the cracks in their little system would widen. They thought I was their safety net. They were about to learn what it felt like to hit the ground. Day 2, 15 missed calls. "Dad, seriously, the laundry's piling up. Where did you go? You left your medicine here. Are you even okay?" This is irresponsible. That last one almost made me laugh. Irresponsible? From the man who used my savings to cover his failed business. From the daughter who called me a burden behind my back. Day 3, the panic began. Jason's voicemail was tight, almost pleading. "Look, Mr. Cook, maybe we said things we didn't mean. Just, can you call Megan back? She's worried." Worried? No, not about me. About themselves. The house without me was a mess. The laundry unwashed. The fridge empty. Bills forgotten. Their comfort evaporating one undone chore at a time. I spent that day walking the small town's main street. Hardware stores, a diner with cracked vinyl booths, a barber shop with the smell of talc powder. Ordinary life, people nodding hello, strangers who didn't know me as a servant. I ordered coffee at the diner and sat by the window. Watched a young couple argue over a grocery list, then laugh 5 minutes later. That's what real family looks like, I thought. Flawed, noisy, but not cruel. By nightfall, I turned my phone back on. 32 messages. The last one from Megan's number, but her voice was different. Cracked. "Dad, please. I can't do this. The bills, the dog, Jason's useless. Just come home, okay? Please." Her please wasn't polite. It was desperate. I leaned back in the motel chair, the glow of the lamp painting shadows on the wall. There it was, the shift. The dependency they'd tried to hide, now exposed. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. This wasn't just about skipping chores or making them panic for a few days. This was about showing them the cost of underestimating me. They thought I was weak, replaceable. They were wrong. I switched off the phone again, slipped it into the drawer, and let the silence fill the room. My absence was speaking louder than any words could, and I had all the time in the world to let the lesson sink in. The silence of my house had never felt like this before. Not peaceful, hollow. Every photo on the walls, every souvenir from trips Margaret once begged for, now looked like props from a stage play I hadn't realized I was starring in. 25 years of marriage. 25 years of being fooled. I sat in my leather recliner, the one she always hated, and replayed the recording on my phone. Her voice, sharp and mocking. God, the man actually believes I love him. Dan's smug reply. By September, he'll be divorced, and you'll be free. Each word hit harder than the last. I stared at my hands, these same hands that had built houses for hundreds of families, that had signed paychecks, carried lumber, wiped tears from Brianna's cheeks when she was a child. Now they were fists, veins raised like blue cables under my skin. The wedding photo on the mantel caught my eye. Margaret in ivory silk, me awkward in a tux that barely fit. Back then, I thought her smile was for me. Now I wondered if it had been practiced for this moment. I pushed myself up, pacing the living room. The floorboards creaked under my boots. She's been rehearsing this for years, I thought. Every fake laugh, every sympathetic nod when I talked about payroll struggles, every kiss on the cheek before bed. All of it part of her long game. And Dan, my daughter's husband, the man I'd welcomed into my family, into my home. He'd leaned on my bookshelf like he already owned it, like he'd studied me and decided I was an easy mark. But he'd made one mistake. They thought I was blind. They thought the man who built a $12 million business brick by brick wouldn't notice his own life being stripped piece by piece. I walked into my office and flicked on the lamp. The mahogany desk gleamed, covered now in yellow legal pads, contracts, and 35 years of records. My kingdom on paper. They'd been cataloging the visible wealth, bank statements, deeds, valuations, but they hadn't scratched the surface. Because what Margaret never knew, what I never shared, was the offshore account Marcus Webb set up for me a decade ago. Perfectly legal, perfectly invisible. She could take the house, the cars, even half the business if a judge allowed it. But she'd never touched the true core of my empire. Still, I needed more than protection. I needed leverage. I dialed Marcus. My accountant, my friend. His voice came steady through the line. Alan, I've been waiting for this call. You sound different. I am different, I told him. My wife and her lawyer's son-in-law think they're playing chess with me. I want every piece of dirt you can find on Dan Thompson. Debt, complaints, anything that stinks. And I want it yesterday. Silence, then a low chuckle. Understood. Give me 3 days. When I hung up, the house pressed in again. Too many memories. Too much poison in the walls. I grabbed my jacket and stepped into the cool April night. The driveway stretched quiet under the porch light Margaret always insisted we leave on. A home should never greet you in darkness, she used to say. Funny, darkness seemed more honest now. I drove aimlessly for a while, the city a blur of neon signs and traffic lights. My mind was sharper than it had been in years. Plans forming, breaking, reforming. Back home, I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the desk again, and began scribbling columns. Assets, weaknesses, timeline, leverage, Dan's debts, Margaret's vanity, Brianna's psychology degree. She'd see cracks in their story if I nudged her. Every angle mattered. The anger was still there, hot and raw. But beneath it, something colder had taken root. A businessman's calm. They thought they were dismantling me. But by the time they realized I was awake, I'd already be tearing down their foundations brick by brick. I stared at Margaret's anniversary card still sitting on the kitchen counter. Here's to 25 more years of happiness. I laughed out loud, a sharp, humorless sound that bounced off the walls. Here's to 3 days, Margaret, I muttered. 3 days until you realize you married the wrong fool. The box sat on my coffee table like a bomb no one had the courage to defuse. Ordinary cardboard, taped neat at the seams, but the details made my skin crawl. The air holes, punched in deliberate rows, each one the size of a pencil head. Somebody had given it lungs. Jessica stood frozen in the doorway, arms wrapped tight across her chest. William, her voice cracked. That isn't a gift. That's a warning. The evening light slanted through the blinds, striping the box with pale gold. The room should have felt safe. It was my living room, my chair, my rug. But the presence of that package warped it into something hostile. Honeysuckle drifted in from the yard, sweet and calm, but the smell didn't reach me. All I could breathe was the cardboard tang of tape and glue, the metallic bite of my own sweat. Then came the sound, a faint scrape, like something shifting against the inside wall. My chest tightened. I held my breath. A beat later, hiss. Long, steady, deliberate. The air in the room thinned. Jessica stumbled back, her shoulder hitting the doorframe. No, no, don't touch it. Her panic mirrored mine, but I forced myself to stay still, eyes locked on the box. My hands tingled with the urge to rip it open, to see what nightmare Samantha, or whoever sent it, had mailed to my front door. But instinct told me the truth. Whatever was inside was alive. And it was angry. I grabbed the phone. My fingers were slick against the screen, slipping once before I hit the numbers. 911. What's your emergency? There's a package in my house, I said, the words rushing out. No return address. Holes in the top. It's moving. It's hissing. The dispatcher's voice was trained calm. Sir, step away. Do not open it. Officers are en route. Can you remain in the home, but at a safe distance? I swallowed. My throat felt raw. Yeah, we'll wait. I hung up, but 10 minutes suddenly sounded like a lifetime. The box rustled again, louder this time, as if whatever was inside had grown restless. Jessica squeezed my arm, whispering, "Snake. It has to be." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but my silence betrayed me. The sound was too deliberate, too primal. I'd grown up in Texas fields. I knew the voice of scales on wood, of breath forced through teeth. Each hiss vibrated in my chest. My body remembered things before my mind could. The old fear of stepping too close to a rattler when I was a boy. My father's voice barking, "Freeze, don't move." That same voice played in my head now, though he'd been dead 20 years. We backed into the hallway. From there, the house looked unfamiliar. My framed photos, my furniture, but everything seemed staged around that one box like props in a play I hadn't agreed to perform in. Then the sound shifted. Not just hissing. Thump. A heavy strike against the inside wall. The cardboard dented outward for a split second before snapping back. Jessica gasped. "William, oh God, it's trying to get out." The minutes crawled. I checked the clock twice. Only 4 had passed. My heartbeat filled the silence. Every creak of the old house made me flinch. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, then fell silent again, as if the neighborhood sensed the threat sitting on my coffee table. Finally, sirens. Faint at first, then louder, until red-blue flashes painted the window blinds. Tires on gravel. Car doors slamming. 2 officers stepped in, hands already in gloves, faces set in the careful calm of men who'd walked into stranger scenes than this. One, tall and broad-shouldered, introduced himself as Officer Reeves. His eyes flicked to the package, narrowed. "No return address," he muttered. "Air holes. Yeah, you did right calling." Jessica hovered near the hallway, pale as chalk. "It's alive. We heard it. Hissing." Reeves crouched, ear tilted close, but not reckless. The box rustled again, as if to confirm. He straightened slowly. "Yeah, that's no prank. Animal control's on their way. Until then, no one touches this." But then his eyes landed on me, steady and searching. "Sir, you got anyone who'd want to scare you like this? Anyone with a grudge?" My mouth dried. For a second, I almost lied. Almost said no, that this was random. But Jessica's gaze burned into the side of my face, silently demanding honesty. And one name thundered in my skull. Samantha. 6 days ago she'd screamed in this very house, spitting venom about money, about how I'd chosen strangers over family. Her last words before she slammed the door. "You'll regret this, Dad. I swear you will." Now here was a box breathing on my coffee table, timed perfectly for Father's Day. I clenched my jaw. Didn't speak the name. Not yet. But the thought had already rooted itself deep. Jessica's whisper filled the silence. "William, what kind of daughter sends her father a package like that?" The hiss rose again, sharper, angrier, as if the thing inside had been listening all along. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only her opening move. The front yard was a wash of blue and red light by the time the animal control van rolled up. Gravel popped under heavy tires, doors slammed, and two men in padded jackets stepped out carrying long tongs and a thick plexiglass container. They moved like soldiers, precise, deliberate, ready for anything. Officer Reeves met them at the porch. His voice was low but carried through the open doorway. Box. Holes. Movement. Hissing confirmed. Confirmed. That word pressed down on my chest. Inside, the living room looked like a crime scene. My chair shoved back, Jessica pale against the hallway wall, the coffee table holding that box like an altar no one wanted to approach. The air smelled sharp, like cardboard mixed with fierce sweat. The taller of the animal control officers crouched low, flashlight beam skating across the cardboard. He didn't touch it, just listened. The hiss came again, long and ugly, and even he flinched. Rattler, he muttered. Full grown. Maybe more than one. Jessica slapped a hand over her mouth. My stomach turned cold. The second officer set the container on the floor, knees bent, calm as if he'd done this dance 100 times. He looked at me once. Sir, you said no one opened it? No, I rasped. My throat felt like sandpaper. Never touched the tape. Good, he said, and pulled a strip cutter from his belt. Reeves leaned close. You sure you want to watch this? I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on that box. The first slice of the cutter snapped through tape. The sound was obscene in the silence. The officers worked fast, pulling the flaps back with gloved hands, keeping their faces turned just enough to dodge a strike. Then the room erupted. A body launched upward, thick, scaled, patterned in the mottled diamonds of the Western Rattler. Its head struck the air, jaws wide, fangs catching the flashlight beam like glass. The hiss that followed was deeper, meaner, vibrating the walls. Jessica screamed. Reeves' hand flew to his holster, but froze. Bullets would kill us all in a room this tight. The officer with the tongs snapped forward, steel jaws clamping the snake mid-body. It twisted, coiling, muscles writhing like cables. The rattle buzzed so hard it felt like an electric current running through the air. Got him, the officer grunted. The other slammed the lid of the container open. A second later, the Rattler dropped inside with a sickening thump. The lid snapped shut. The sound of the rattle filled the plastic walls, furious, endless. Then, slowly it quieted. My knees gave out, and I hit the arm of the couch, gripping the fabric like a drowning man. Jessica collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing silently. The taller officer wiped sweat from his brow. That's no prank, he said. Somebody wanted you dead. Dead. The word wasn't dramatic. It was fact. Reeves turned to me, voice heavy. This isn't a random act. Someone knew your address, knew how to send this on a day you'd be home. Sir, you need to tell me who has reason to send you something like this. Jessica's eyes cut to me, pleading for honesty. My jaw clenched until it hurt. In my head, the name roared again, Samantha. And this time, I knew silence wasn't going to protect me. Or her. Because if this was her first shot, the next one wouldn't miss. The house still smelled of snake. Musk and cardboard, thick enough that I swore it clung to my shirt. The plexiglass container throbbed with muffled rattles as the animal control officers carried it out, their boots heavy on the porch. The front door closed, and for the first time all night, silence returned. Except it wasn't silence. Not really. Jessica's sobs came soft and jagged from the hallway. Officer Reeves stood in my living room, his notepad out, his expression carved from stone. Mr. Hale, he said, voice steady. This wasn't a prank. It was attempted homicide. I need you to give me a name. The word homicide hung in the air. Cold. Clinical. Final. I felt my pulse in my teeth. My mind flicked through decades of faces, business rivals, bad deals, neighbors I'd ticked off. But there was only one face I couldn't shake. One voice I could still hear, venom dripping from it 6 days ago. You'll regret this, Dad. I swear you will. Samantha, my daughter. I looked at Reeves. My throat tightened. There's someone. Jessica straightened against the wall, eyes wide, wet. She knew the name before I spoke it. My daughter, I said finally. The words scraped coming out. Samantha. Reeves' pen paused mid-note. He lifted his eyes, searching my face for hesitation. Why her? I sat heavily in the chair across from the ruined coffee table. The cardboard box lay split open, empty, like a crime scene photograph. My fingers curled against my knees until my knuckles popped. She's been angry, I said. About money. About choices I've made. She told me I'd regret crossing her. 6 days ago, in this house, she said it to my face. And now, I gestured toward the shredded box. Now this shows up. Reeves didn't flinch. He scribbled notes, his pen scratching like a saw through quiet wood. You have proof of those threats. Only my memory, I admitted. But I can give you her number. Her address. Jessica stepped forward, voice shaking. She said it, officer. I was here. I heard her. Reeves gave a slow nod, tucking his pen behind his ear. That's corroboration. It helps. We'll look into her, discreetly. He leaned forward. But sir, until we know more, you need to take precautions. Someone willing to mail you a live rattler isn't finished. Finished. The word stung. Because he was right. This wasn't her final play. It was just the first move. I walked Reeves to the door. His cruiser lights flashed once before the engine faded down the street, leaving the house dark and still again. Jessica lingered in the living room, arms crossed, staring at the empty box like it might come back to life. You're going to tell the police everything? She asked quietly. I already did, I said. My voice was steady. Too steady. Because inside, another voice spoke louder. The voice that had guided me through every deal, every contract, every negotiation I'd ever survived. Control the information. Control the timing. The police would dig. Slowly. They'd file reports, run checks, circle around Samantha like sharks waiting for blood. But I didn't have the patience for slow. She'd sent venom into my house. She'd filled my living room with hisses and coils, counting on fear to paralyze me. But fear and anger are close cousins. And in me, they always bled into strategy. Jessica touched my arm. What are you thinking? I stared at the gutted box, at the holes punched for air, at the careful cruelty of it. My jaw tightened until it ached. I'm thinking, I said. It's time Samantha learns that when you play with snakes, sometimes you get bitten. The clock ticked toward midnight. The house creaked in the summer heat. And in my chest, the cold fire of revenge settled deeper, steadying me for what came next. By the next morning, the house smelled of bleach and coffee. I'd scrubbed the coffee table myself, not because it needed it, but because I needed it. Scrubbing gives a man something to do when sleep won't come. Jessica had gone home just before dawn, her face pale, her arms wrapped around herself like she was afraid the night would follow her. I'd promised her I'd be careful. I'd promised a lot of things I didn't believe. At 8:15 sharp, Officer Reeves called. His voice was steady but clipped. Mr. Hale, we traced the shipping label. Paid in cash, mailed from a drop box outside Phoenix. No cameras. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. Of course she did. Samantha always had her mother's attention to detail, twisted now into something sharp. Do you have children of your own, officer? I asked. He hesitated. 2. Then you know, I said, how it feels when the person you raised turns the knife. He didn't answer, but I could hear it in his breathing. He understood more than he wanted to. After the call, I sat in my study, staring at Caroline's photograph. The woman who would have never let Samantha grow into this. The woman who would have told me to fight back smarter, not harder. So I started planning. Step 1, control the narrative. Samantha thought she owned the story. Angry daughter, selfish father, money she was owed. Fine. I'd let her believe that story. Let her speak it into the wrong ears. Step 2, bait. I pulled out my old flip phone, the one I'd kept from my contracting days. No GPS, no cloud, just numbers. I dialed hers. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice cool and sharp. Well, you survived. The snake in the box wasn't the worst part. It was that she said it like a joke. You've made your point, I said, keeping my tone flat. You wanted to scare me. Congratulations. Now let's talk about the house. A pause, then a smile in her voice. Finally ready to hand it over. I'll consider it, I said, but I want to see you face to face. Tonight. My place. No games. She laughed softly. Old man, Everything's a game. But fine. Tonight. I hung up. My hand was steady, but inside my chest, a storm brewed. Step 3. Trap. I called Reeves again, gave him the time and place. He didn't like it, but he agreed. We'll be nearby, unseen. You sure about this? I'm sure, I said. If she wants me gone, let's see what she does when she thinks I'm giving her the stage. The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. I checked the recorder batteries, tested the little camera Darren from down the street had helped me install in the lamp. Every angle mattered. Every word would be evidence. By sundown, the house was quiet again, too quiet. The air felt thick, like the moment before lightning. I poured 2 glasses of water and set them on the table, one for her, one untouched. At 8:07, headlights swept across the window. A car door slammed. Heels on gravel. The doorknob turned without a knock. Samantha stepped in, perfume sharp, hair tied back, her smile all teeth. She didn't bother with hello. Where's the deed? She asked. I gestured toward the table. Sit. She sat, crossing her legs, eyes scanning the room like a hawk. The glass of water stayed untouched. I leaned forward, my voice low. Tell me something, Samantha. When you sent that box, did you think I'd scream? Run? Die? Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes did. One quick flicker. That was all I needed. You can't prove anything, she said. Besides, maybe it wasn't me. I tapped the lamp once with my finger. Its red light blinked back, steady as a heartbeat. Oh, I said softly. I think I can. And outside, through the thin summer air, I heard the crunch of boots on gravel. Reeves and his men, moving closer. Samantha's smile finally cracked. Samantha's eyes darted toward the front window. She must have seen the faint shadow of movement outside, the reflection of headlights against the curb. But she didn't panic. My daughter never panicked. She smiled again, thin and sharp, like a blade sheathed in lipstick. You think a little lamp and a red light changes anything? She whispered. You've always been predictable, Dad. Easy. That's why Mom left everything in your hands. You never questioned. And that's why I'm here tonight. Because you're still the same fool. The word should have cut. Years ago, they would have. But tonight, her venom washed over me without finding a wound. I'd already cauterized every weak spot. I leaned forward, my elbows on the table. You're right about one thing. I am predictable. I build. I fix. I hold things together. But you forgot something, Samantha. She tilted her head. And what's that? I tapped the recorder in my shirt pocket. The faint blink of red lit the space between us. I learn, and I've been learning from you. Her smirk twitched. For the first time, doubt crawled up her face. You think the police are going to drag me off in cuffs because I sent you a package? She said, voice rising. You've got no proof. No fingerprints. No cameras. I nodded slowly. Maybe, but I've got this. I clicked play on the recorder. Her voice from earlier hissed back at us. Well, you survived. The blood drained from her face. You baited me, she whispered. I smiled the way a carpenter does when the last nail goes in straight. No, Samantha, you baited yourself. She shoved back from the table, the chair screeching across the floor. Her hand went to her purse. Reeves was through the door before she touched the zipper. Hands where I can see them. His voice filled the house, steel and thunder. Another officer followed, cuffs in hand. Samantha froze. Her eyes cut to me, wide now, stripped of bravado. Dad, you do this to your own daughter? I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my voice didn't waver. No, Samantha, you did this to yourself. You mailed venom to my house. You brought death into my living room. Tonight isn't about me betraying you. It's about you betraying every damn thing I gave you. Reeves stepped forward, snapped the cuffs over her wrists. She didn't fight. Not anymore. The fight had drained out of her the moment she heard her own words echo back. As they led her out, the night swallowed her protests. Neighbors peeked from porches, faces pale under porch lights, watching the girl they'd once seen ride a pink bike get shoved into the back of a cruiser. Inside, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. Jessica slipped back in from the hallway, her face white as paper. William, it's over? I shook my head. Not yet. Because I knew there would be lawyers. Courts. She'd twist and lie, try to paint me as the bitter old man. But the truth was already nailed down. I had her voice. I had her words. And I had a lifetime of patience sharpened into something harder. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the same table where she'd tried to smile me into submission, and stared at the gutted box still sitting on the coffee table. Empty now, but I could almost hear the rattle inside it, faint and steady, like a clock ticking toward midnight. Jessica touched my shoulder. "What are you going to do?" I looked at Caroline's picture on the shelf, her smile caught in a summer long gone. "Finish it," I said simply. And I did. 3 weeks later, I walked into court with Reeves on one side and my lawyer on the other. Samantha sat across the room, wrists free but eyes hollow. She tried to smile, but there was no bite left in it. The evidence was played, her voice echoing through the speakers. Well, you survived." The jury didn't flinch. The prosecutor didn't even need to dress it up. When the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, she looked at me, just once. No words, just that hollow stare. I stood, straightened my jacket, walked past her without a pause. Because my revenge wasn't in the verdict. It wasn't in the cuffs or the sentence. My revenge was in knowing that the one thing Samantha thought she could take from me, my strength, my will, was the one thing she could never touch. And as the doors closed behind me, I let myself say it aloud, soft and final, a sentence that would echo longer than any gavel strike. "She'll never forget this day."